Friends, it's Wednesday, July 19, 2023. You're watching the VPC devotional series. I'm Reverend Dr. Dave Joint. I want to share with you some painful and beautiful and interesting verses from Jonah chapter 2 today. Here they are, verses 7 through 9a. This is Jonah speaking from the belly of the whale. As my life was ebbing away, I remembered the Lord. My prayer came to you into your holy temple. Those who worship vain idols forsake their true loyalty. But I, with the voice of thanksgiving, will sacrifice to you. This is the word of the Lord. Well, sounds pious, doesn't it? Sounds holy. Very painful for me to read these verses. Jonah is disobedient and defiant, and his defiance, his withholding of crucial information from his fellow mariners, has put all of their lives in peril. Because the punishment for Jonah, the stopping of his running away from God by the storm, is threatening to kill everybody on the boat. And so Jonah has been disobedient and defiant. It's the mariners who have prayed. It is the mariners who have invited him into the prayer, woken him up. It's the mariners who have not wanted to sacrifice the life of someone who had betrayed them. And also, through the storm, they'd had to throw over their cargo, so it made their voyage essentially economically pointless. He'd harmed them financially. And yet, they don't want to enact vengeance on him. They want to try to save his life. They appeal in prayer to God, please, can we stop the storm in such a way that we don't have to throw this man overboard? That wasn't God's plan, but it shows this beautiful, merciful action on the part of the mariners who, although they're pagans and don't have the full story, their faith is very incipient. They are still worshiping idols of wood and stone, but they want, there's such a thing as an honest seeking paganism. People who are spiritually seeking, they haven't found the answers, but they want to honor a God they don't yet know, and that's what these mariners are like. And so they're doing their best, given what they know, to try to be faithful. In contrast to Jonah, who's had all the advantages of training and knows God's story and he knows God's identity, presumably is familiar with the Torah and is now resisting following God. So for Jonah to be so colossally unaware of who he is and what he's doing, that he says, those who worship vain idols, i.e. those shipmates, forsake their loyalty, but I, with the voice of thanksgiving, will sacrifice to you. I mean, it's just such a misunderstanding of what's been going on in Jonah's life. It is painful to read. He has exercised a depraved indifference for his would-be friends on this boat, and they've treated him like a friend even when he doesn't deserve it. Even in the belly of the whale with the near-death experience, Jonah is smug and self-satisfied. And you may remember the story that Jesus tells of the spiritual leader who goes to pray in public, and he's got ready with his eloquent prayer, and someone comes up alongside him and beats his head against the wall and says, "Oh, I'm a terrible sinner, Lord. I know I am. My life isn't right, but please forgive me." And then the spiritual leader looks down at him and says, "Lord, I want to thank you, first of all, that I'm not like this guy." And Jesus says, "Now, which one of these two went away forgiven?" Prayer can be a way of showing off our spirituality and not a way of seeking God's mercy and forgiveness and repenting of the things that are wrong so we can be filled with his goodness. And so there can be an inauthentic spirituality that exists in religious people. And that was something Jesus often exposed, and it certainly is part of the dynamic we hear with Jonah. Let's take a moment and pray. Gracious God, superiority is a cancer, and we want to cut it out of our lives. Show us the places where we tend to be smug and self-satisfied in our hearts, and help stop us. Show a stop sign to us when we feel or act in ways that are dismissive of others. We ask this in your Son's name. Amen.